Hey everybody, welcome to the Atheist Experience. We're live. It's Sunday, August 11th, 2013. I'm Matt Dillahunty. This is Jeff D.
Hi folks, hi Matt.
How are you?
I'm good, yourself?
I'm all right. We are here. This is a live public access call-in television program. We'll have the number up shortly. We take live calls. We talk about what people believe and why. We get into arguments. We learn things. We teach things maybe on a couple of occasions. But I don't know.
Whatever comes up.
Whatever happens. So we've got a bunch of callers already queued up, and you didn't have anything in particular that you wanted to go over?
Not particularly. I do want to remind everyone that the Nonprofits Show is back. You can find out information about that on nonprofitsradio.com. That's the old website. It's being revamped, but the info there is, to my knowledge, still roughly accurate.
Well, it's accurate again, because I think we kept the picture of just you, Russell, and Dennis
That's
up.
right, that's right.
Through all the years that I was doing it and you weren't, and now it's back.
Yep, it's me and Dennis Lubay and Russell Glasser doing the show again. And special celebrity guests. We had a message from a pretend Pat Robertson, and quotes from Pope in Boots.
Pope in Boots.
Yeah. Listen to that episode if you want to hear what that's all about.
All right.
This is this show.
We'll go ahead and get started taking phone calls. As a reminder, when this show's over, the people involved, a good chunk of them anyway, often go to dinner. There's the address there. Can't tell you to come down, but that's where some people will be. What are you going to do? First up, Mark in Mesa, Arizona. How are you?
I'm doing well. Just had a couple of questions for you.
Sure. Go ahead.
I am in high school, and I go to a Socratic-based learning school, so we just discuss topics during history. We go to a class called Humane Letters. It's a 2-hour-long period of literature and history, and we're studying Greek philosophy and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have, we were discussing the concept of objective morality, and I was against it because I think that morality is subjective based on society. And it got to the point where, out of the classroom, I was discussing with another student whether or not the Bible and the religion of the Catholic Church could actually promote morality or give its own morals. And she was trying to convince me that without church, she wouldn't be moral. She wouldn't have to say someone was raised.
So you've got a friend who's a non-believer who is convinced that without church or religion there would be no grounding for morals?
Well, she is a believer, I think, but she's very on, I feel like she's on the cusp.
Okay.
And I was just curious, sorry, I'll let you go.
No, that's fine. I disagree with you on whether or not there are objective moral standards, but that's a big, long discussion that we don't need to go into at the moment. This idea that you need religion for morality is one that's pervasive, but I wonder what the demonstration that it's true is, because my position is that, I gave a talk, which you can find online actually if you Google superiority of secular morality, and I've since had to revise that further, because it's not that I think that secular moral systems are superior. They're the only moral systems I think we actually have, because I don't find that religions are moral systems. They're moral pronouncements that this is right or this is wrong, with no real mechanism for people to figure out why something is viewed as right or wrong. And so, so I don't, I would have to know exactly what her reasons were, and what's convinced her that, you're not going to have, it seems to me that you can build a moral system, and I'd recommend going ahead and Googling for that, because I kind of outlined this, but off very simple principles. If morality is about well-being, then, and we are physical beings in a physical universe, then there are truths, real truths about what is beneficial for us to our well-being and what is detrimental, both as individuals and groups. And so given those facts, if that's what morality is, if that's what we're talking about, and if we're not, then I'll need a new definition because that's what I'm talking about, then I have no good reason to think that religious pronouncements about morality have anything to do with our well-being. There's no demonstration of why a claim from a religion actually benefits us, and no reason to think that even if there's a God who's making pronouncements that he's actually correct.
And that's what she's doing. She's basing it on the Bible and the fact that atheists don't have a rule book.
Okay, so what does she think about homosexuals?
I think she's more lenient on that. I don't think that she follows the Bible strictly on that, but she does follow it strictly on a lot of other things.
What about slavery?
I'm sure she's against it, though the Bible's for it.
Yeah, so if she's going to point to the Bible and say that this is the source of morality, and yet she's going to reject it when her own senses, her own understanding of what is right and wrong conflict with it, then stop pointing to the Bible and stop pretending that it's where you're actually getting your answers from. In fact, what she's doing is saying, I really don't know what the answer is on this, so I'm just going to accept the Bible's answer until somebody demonstrates that it's wrong. That's not any way to work through a moral system. I don't know. Do you have?
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, I got to bring up Euthyphro. Are you familiar with the Euthyphro dilemma?
No, I'm not.
Look it up. It sounds like your class is a place where that information should be available to you. It's Plato talking about Socrates again, and the basic question is, Socrates asks this character Euthyphro, are your actions that you're so proud of claiming that they're moral, are they because the gods say so? Are they moral just because the gods say so? Or are they inherently moral and the gods are just instructing you that they're moral? Right? And that raises some troubling questions for almost every Christian I've ever met. Right? That because if it's just made up pronouncements, then that's not really morality. We understand that just because a big powerful guy says so doesn't make a thing right. But if they're inherently moral and the God is only instructing us, then really morality is something outside of the gods, and it dethrones them entirely as lawgivers.
Because they're inherent, we don't need them to
Right.
establish them for us.
Right.
Yeah, if something's moral because God says so, then God could say the exact opposite tomorrow and say as what's in the
Right.
Bible that
Right.
slavery's okay when we know it's not.
Neither prong of the dilemma is really satisfactory to most Christians, and now they often try to get out of it by doing this bait and switch to God's nature, saying that, oh, well, he didn't just make them up, it's his nature, right? And it's inherent in his nature. Well, then the next question is, where did his nature come from? If he authored his own nature, then once again, it's just his pronouncement. If he didn't author his own nature, then once again, he is not the source of morality. Morality is just inherent in the universe.
Yeah, it's I'm with Jeff. When they try the it's God's nature, well, great. Then either then God himself becomes irrelevant to the discussion, or you've basically just moved the question back one step.
Right. They try to move the goalposts back. You can take the goalposts right back to them. So bring that up. It basically it makes it really difficult for Christians to cling to the idea that morality could come from their God's commands in the first place.
Which is also potentially an absurdity anyway, that the idea, I mean, when I talk about morality, I'm mostly in line with Sam Harris. I'd recommend The Moral Landscape. I don't necessarily agree with everything in it, but I'm by and large in line with, if we're going to be talking about this, what we generally mean is we're talking about well-being, and that is the sort of thing about which fiat declarations have no bearing. You know, drinking battery acid is bad for pretty much everybody. Even if you find somebody who can drink battery acid, that doesn't change the fact that as a general rule, it's bad for you. And it didn't take anybody's pronouncement to actually discover that or make or change the truth of it. There's an aspect of this that Well, I'll just leave it at that, and if you had a follow-up question, go ahead.
Another thing, I was talking to my father, and I was pulling examples from the Bible of how if God really is condoning a lot of these actions, he's a bad, he's a really mean guy. I mean, slavery, you get stoned for being sexual, you should kill your children if they're bad. I mean, and then I was pulling these up, and he believes in the Bible, but then he's saying to me, well, can you prove God said these things? Can you prove God condoned these? And I'm saying, of course not. They're the invention of man to condone this.
That's kind of unusual. I mean, you know, he believes it, but he doesn't necessarily believe it. It reminds me of when we had Ray Comfort on the show, and Ray said that he didn't agree or didn't believe that everything in the Bible was true and accurate. And I thought that was a big admission on his part, but it then leads directly to the question of, okay, how do you go about determining what is true and accurate? Because I fully admit that there are true and accurate things in the Bible and in the Quran and in pretty much any book you want to point to. Even in some high fantasy, they point to real truths about behavior.
It's just not true because they're in the book. It's just true because it's true.
I would ask a believer who wants to weasel out of responsibility for passages like that by making the claim that, well, only some of the Bible is God's revealed word, right? Only some of it is accurate and other bits aren't. They can't get away from the fact that for, almost 2,000 years, those passages were descriptive of what their religion was all about. They can poo-poo them now, but they are continuing a belief system that not only believed those things to be true, but they were like core beliefs of the religion for many, many centuries. Yeah. So to just discard them like that and not take any responsibility of the path their religion has taken to get them where they are now, I think is worth looking at.
Yeah, this pick and choose mentality, this kind of revisionist, we're going to do a new interpretation. They've offered no mechanism for how one can determine what is and isn't reliable. They either simply make assertions or appeals to faith, and I have no use for either.
Yeah, and they only seem to pick out the things that don't sound completely crazy anymore.
Most of them.
Yeah.
I hear there's going to be a new TV show covering the snake handling preachers, which I will definitely be watching. But you can't paint everybody with one large brush either.
Is it like a reality show?
Yes, it is a reality show.
Really?
There's also one coming out about rich preachers.
Yeah, there is one about.
You just know the producers of the show about snake handling are desperately hoping there'll be some bites.
There are bites. You'll see bites.
Oh, good grief.
But anyway,
that is good TV.
The thing is, I want to make sure you don't necessarily paint with a broad brush, because just because somebody happens to use the Christian label, that doesn't mean you know anything at all about which category they fit in. There's everybody from the Reverend Barry Lynn, who I'm happy to work with on church-state separation issues, to the speaking in tongues, snake handling, let's not go see a doctor version.
Pray over our children.
Yeah, it's kind of over the top. But I appreciate the call, and check out, not to necessarily promote only my own stuff, but since you called to get my answer, there's an actual lecture out there, Superiority of Secular Morality, that gives my thoughts on it, and also I'd recommend Sam Harris's book, and there's a few others too. Richard Carrier's got a book out on morality. Michael Shermer had a book out on the science of good and evil. And these are all interesting takes on the big questions about morality.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad I got on the show.
Thanks, Mark. Have a
Bye.
good day. And in a similar vein, we've got Evan in Atlanta. How are you?
Hey, you guys. What's going on? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, Evan.
Awesome. This first time calling. I'm an atheist. I'm a huge fan of you guys.
Well, thanks.
I was talking to a theist the other day, and we were talking about morality, because it usually comes around to that, as you know, Matt, from your debates. And I asked them a question that I ask a lot is about hell, which is infinite punishment for finite crimes moral? And they say, yes, it is, because God said so. So they're taking the position that things are moral because God says so.
Yep.
And I don't know how. I mean, I know it's wrong and stupid, but I don't know what to say to that. Where do you go from there?
If God told you to sacrifice your son to him, would you do it?
I mean,
Yeah.
if they're really saying that this is just because God said so, because God said so is their reason, then I feel sorry for them. They've sacrificed their humanity and their moral compass on the altar of deference to an idea which they don't even have good reason to think is true. I mean, it's absurd to think that merely because anybody, God or otherwise, said so, that this is necessarily true and good. Here's my favorite question for that. How did you figure out that God was the good one and Satan was the evil one? What mechanism did you use to decide between those two? And we're just going to go ahead and grant that those two exist and you need to make some decision. How did you determine that God was the good one and Satan was the evil one?
That's a really good point. I haven't even thought of asking that.
There is no way. I mean, you're talking about
the moral compass.
If they're real. If they're real, you're talking about two supernatural beings with power beyond ours, both of which are capable of fooling us, and you need to figure out which one's good and which one's not. And the only way you can do this is to use your own understanding of morality. And what do you have to do then? Well, you have to figure out what it is that you're talking about, what it is, what mechanisms you're going to use to try to determine. And that makes the two of them irrelevant. And therefore I can judge both of them to be, perhaps immoral on occasions and good on occasions. I mean, the Gnostics knew about this ages ago when they wrote about the absurd Genesis account. And when you look at the Genesis account, now I'm not assuming that the talking snake was necessarily Satan. That depends on whose tradition you want to read. But if you look at that account, the snake was telling the truth, right down the line. God says you're going to die when you eat this. No, you won't. You're actually just going to get knowledge. What is the Bible say that God says? Look, man has eaten of this and has become like us, which is exactly what the snake said would happen. Did they die? No, they got banished. Well, people want to do a revisionist it was a spiritual death. Okay, whatever. But the fact of the matter is, you look at who told the truth in that story, and it was the snake. And the people who will admit this will say, well, of course, because the devil's going to use truth. All it takes is a little bitty lie in the truth, and they're absolutely right. You're going to be more convincing in con jobs if you're mostly sticking to the truth and just insert the... I understand. I agree. Now, how did you determine that God is the good one sufficiently for you to say everything God says is true and good? You can't demonstrate that.
I love that. That's exactly what I needed.
Cool. Thanks, Evan. I got a bunch of other callers waiting, but I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
All right. We've got Andrew in Allentown. Thanks for waiting.
Hey, what's up? How's the weather down in Texas?
Hot, really hot.
Okay.
My air conditioner went out yesterday, but we got it fixed. Ooh.
Oh, good. But here's my question. From my perspective of being a YouTube user, I'm a username name same as you. I'm noticing like a new fanaticism against theism these days. It seems like
Fanaticism against theism?
Yeah, it seems like every time I bring up an argument, there's always straw man arguments against it. I know there's like a principle.
So can you give like an example of one of your arguments in the straw man against it?
Well, I mean, there's loads of them. Like, I would say God is a mind, and then it's like, well, mind is a thinking. They would go back and resort to a brain, and how a mind can't exist without a brain, and so
How is that a straw man?
Yeah, I don't understand how that's
a straw man is when you erect something that is false.
Well, yeah,
where are the examples of minds that exist apart from physical brains? Where are they?
There's been scientific studies. I mean, this is throwing off my whole argument. But there's been scientific studies that plants have in like a mental activity where they can communicate with each other underneath the ground.
Andrew, even granting that there's something going on in plants that's like a mind, the plant is then using its physical form to do that, to do whatever it is it's doing that you're referring to, right? I mean, a plant is not a ghost. It's a physical thing. So we're back to the same question. Where are these examples of minds that exist without some kind of physical substrate?
The default position. It would absolutely be the default position because, let me think. Because when we're born, we actually have self-consciousness, whereas we have to learn how to relate to the physical world. That comes over time.
What does that have to do with
I don't understand how. Yeah,
Of course, some people know more stuff than others. We do learn things. What does that have to do with anything?
No, I mean, just the idea of consciousness. It's not something that we learn. It's just there by the time when we're born.
Consciousness is something that is produced by the functioning of our brains. That's right. So what's your point?
Yeah, but there's no real physical evidence of that. I mean, how can you tell the difference between
there is
program?
Andrew, it's not that there is no physical evidence that the brain is making.
Evidence.
All of it is.
You just said there's no physical evidence that the brains are making the consciousness. But every time that we encounter clear evidence of consciousness, there's some physical processor that is producing it, or that there's some physical processor that appears to be producing it. I'll soften my position to that, okay?
And no evidence of anything external or supernatural or spiritual,
right.
active or required.
And not only no evidence, there's no theory based on evidence of how that could even happen.
Okay.
So you got nothing.
Well, not necessarily.
Yes, necessarily. You have nothing.
Here's a few examples. I just want to say, though, first of all, this was not my best example of a straw man argument, I admit.
We asked you for one. This is the one you gave us.
Okay, so hang on, Andrew. We didn't choose to steer you down this particular path to beat up on it. You came on and said that there's more of a, I forget the word you used. Fanatical attack on theistic positions, and a bunch of atheists that are using straw men. Now, I will fully acknowledge that out there on YouTube, it's a mixed bag. There are some people that are going to make brilliant arguments, and there's some people who are going to make terrible arguments. I hear terrible arguments from atheists, and I've called people out on them. I called Sam Harris out on this nonsense that the Bible says pi equals 3. Michael Shermer said something the other day on Twitter that at first blush looks kind of impressive, but when you actually look a little deeper, it was not really a good argument. The thing is, I don't think Shermer meant it that way. I think he was just kind of having a bit of fun. But if you're going to say that people are strawmanning your arguments, and I ask you for an example, you don't get to cry foul when we say no, in fact, they're not strawmanning you.
Well, let me just run through a quick list, and then I'll bring up some more strawman arguments. About minds existing without brains. There's heart transplantations that, when their hearts are transplanted from one patient to another, they actually receive memories of the donor.
No, they don't.
Andrew, once again, Andrew, just a moment, Andrew. Even taking that rather ludicrous claim at face value, what just happened there? A physical part of one body got moved physically into another body. So that still doesn't go anywhere near supporting your claim that consciousnesses can be these non-physical things that waft around or do not require a physical form to live in.
Not to mention,
but it wasn't a brain.
Well, not to.
Yeah, come on! You're going to play that, and we already went over this with plants, right? You claimed plants had some kind of thing that was kind of like consciousness. Okay, fine. A plant is still a physical object. A heart is still a physical object.
That's true.
This thing
But
you're
in any
calling
case,
God, where's God's plant fibers or his heart or his brain or any of that stuff?
But even in addition to that, first of all, I don't believe for a second that this claim that somebody got a heart transplant and got memories along with it. I don't believe that. I think, matter of fact, I would suspect that somebody would be getting a Nobel Prize for demonstrating that this is actually true, and that it wouldn't probably appear in glurge creationist nonsense. But let's say, for example, that we know nothing at all about consciousness or the mind. We don't understand it at all. Let's go back 1,000 years. What the hell does this have to do with the God? You actually have to supply evidence for your proposition, not try to poke holes in the actual scientific explanations that exist. Because if we don't know the answer to something, that doesn't mean that there's a God and a magical spirit that produces consciousness any more than it demonstrates that Thor threw lightning bolts before we knew what they were.
Well, there's the whole monad argument of Leibniz. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that.
I'm not even sure you listened to what I just said.
Well, no, I did. This is what you said. You said even if we go back throughout all of history and we check all the physical evidence related to scientists, there's no connection with that with the God claim.
Yeah, that's not quite what I said, but go ahead.
But well, anyways, well, here's some more straw man arguments, I guess.
Okay.
It's basically like the most, like from the Bible. Like they take things from the Bible, and they, even though I'm just using, say, a New Testament claim on the Bible, they throw up things from the Old Testament.
Whoa. You're saying so you made New Testament claims and somebody brought up Old Testament? Do you reject the Old Testament?
No. But some of the things, like where it comes to like doing animal sacrifices and things like that.
Yeah, but
there's no need to do that nowadays.
Okay, but are you rejecting the Old Testament?
No.
So how is it a straw man for somebody to bring up the Old Testament?
Because it's interpreted differently now since the New Testament.
Okay, and so was God wrong before?
No, and here's another thing. The Bible is a personal book, so Jesus taught.
So you can interpret it any old way you want and not be wrong then, if it's just a personal book.
If you can interpret it any way you want, why can't, Andrew, if you're free to interpret the Bible any way you want, how come these people who are disagreeing with you aren't allowed to do exactly that, and you're accusing them of raising up straw men against you?
Well, they can interpret it their way, but they're throwing that interpretation at me.
Oh, well.
So I'm supposed to be.
And you're throwing your interpretation at them, Andrew.
But anyways, here's my question.
Well, no. You said you were going to offer straw man examples, and now you're complaining that people point to things in the Old Testament. Are you opposed to the Ten Commandments?
Not at all, no.
Not at all. Okay. But what about the other 603?
Well, here's the thing about the Bible. The most central claim would be the Sermon on the Mount, because that's the Jesus' testimony before the public.
Well, why is that? Why is that the most important thing?
Because that's his biggest presentation before the public.
So what? Why is that the most important thing in the Bible? Do you realize that if it wasn't for the Genesis account and the fall, that there'd be no reason for a Jesus to even exist? Wouldn't that make that the most important thing in the Bible?
Well, I mean, you were just talking about morality, and this would be the
no.
most central.
I'm asking you questions because one of us definitely knows the Bible, and I'm going to see if the other one does.
Well, I'm a Christian who believes in Jesus as the Savior, but as far as being an expert on the Bible, I have to admit I'm not an expert.
So why do you believe in Jesus as a Savior?
Because I turn to it when I need, like, let's say, I just need, like, encouragement from God. I would look through the Bible.
Sure, and some people have a drink.
And that doesn't answer Matt's question. Matt asked you why you believe in the Bible, and you told him of a religious practice that you have.
Well,
that is not an answer to Matt's question. Why do you believe? Well, how exactly would you put it?
Why did you believe in Jesus?
Yeah.
Well, in my own personal account, I was an atheist until like 3 years ago, and I was sick. And,
sure, I was an atheist for the first 4 or 5 years of my life, but go ahead.
You were sick?
I used to argue against religion.
Okay.
And
I bet you were no more effective at it than you are at arguing for religion.
Well, I never even asked my first question yet.
Okay.
But anyways, but then I was sick. I was in the hospital, and I was sent home. And I wasn't feeling well even when I was sent home. And a Christian friend of mine told me to open the Bible, and then to just randomly open to a page.
Mm-hmm.
I did that, and I ran. There was a psalm, walking through the valley of death, and that was the first thing I opened to.
Okay.
And I talked to my sister, and she said, I told her I wasn't feeling well. She said, just stay at home, because I've been through the emergency room a few times already. So I talked to my family. They said, stay home. But when I read that passage, it kind of like irked me. So I went back to the hospital, and as it turns out, if I didn't go back at that time, I would have died.
Okay, so you weren't feeling very well, and somebody had you open the Bible at random, and the Bible didn't say anything about go to the hospital because you're about to die. But it irked you, and you decided to take that action. And based on that, you are accepting that the Bible is true and Jesus is Lord.
Well, here's another thing. I was writing
Hang
a book
on,
at
that
the
was a
time,
question. That was a
Yeah,
question.
yes, that's true, yes.
Okay, so
That's an
when you
answer,
say
yes.
you were an atheist before, I have no problem accepting that. Were you ever a skeptic or a critical thinker? Because
Oh, yeah. In fact, I just wrote a book about proving
should-
God was nothing. I want to prove God was nothing.
yeah, see, the
And
thing
I
is,
just about-
the thing is this: what you've described doesn't demonstrate anything at all about the truth of a Bible or Jesus at all. I mean, there's nothing. It's like you have not. It's like you don't know anything about skepticism or critical thinking. What if somebody told you to open the Quran and you to open the Quran to a passage that irked you enough to go back to the hospital?
Well, I admit, if that happened, I would be a Muslim.
Okay, and so why are you writing books about skepticism? Because you don't have the first clue about it.
Well, no, that's not true, because I was skeptical. How would you define skepticism?
Skepticism is twofold. There's philosophical skepticism and there's scientific skepticism. And the philosophical skepticism is the idea that we should not believe things until there is sufficient evidence for them. And the application of that, which is the scientific skepticism, is to come up with a mechanism by which we can establish the truth of claims to the best of our ability. It involves the tools of science and critical thinking. It does not involve, hey, I got a feeling and I'm going to use the fallacy I'm going to make a fallacious argument that of causation or truth by either circling the hits and avoiding the misses, or just it's your argument, or your argument about what you read in the Bible is so fallacious that it is beyond my capabilities to identify the exact fallacy in it right now. That's how bizarre it is.
Jesus taught in parables. Jesus is God, so the Bible teaches in parables. It seems to make sense. But anyway,
Can we just lose this
Yeah,
guy?
I'm sorry. You said you hadn't got to your question. I'm going to let you ask your question, and then we're probably pretty much done, because Jesus spoke in parables. Jesus was God, therefore the Bible speaks in parables. Is another one of the. I ask your question.
Well, your show says it accepts only physical evidence from its callers. I think that's what you were relating to. What's physically demonstrable? But nowhere at the beginning of the show does it state that disclosure. So
What?
Nowhere at the beginning of the show do you state that you only want to hear physical evidence from your callers.
How many times have you called this show, Andrew? I recognize you from
Oh, yeah.
previous shows. You haven't figured that out by now?
Yeah, and first of all, it's not just physical evidence. I want actual good evidence. If you could demonstrate, see, here's the thing. We can only investigate scientifically those things that are in the natural world. There's this barrier that we can't go beyond. But if there's something beyond that barrier that manifests in reality, we can test for the phenomenon. That's what we do in every case when, for example, psychic mediums claim to be speaking to the dead. We can't actually investigate whether or not they're speaking from the dead. What we can do is investigate the veracity of their claims. Are they getting good information? Is there good reason to think that there's something beyond this? Likewise, when it comes to intercessory prayer, maybe there's a God who exists outside of space, but if people are saying that this God answers prayer in reality, that is necessarily a manifestation that we can test. And we do test it, and it comes out to be no more reliable than chance, and actually worse in situations where people are knowing they're being prayed for. There's a methodology to determine whether or not something is true. And if you believe something absent that methodology, you are necessarily being irrational and unskeptical, because you are accepting things without good evidence.
Well, you're saying like theists are doomed to be delusional in the same sense that fundamentalists claim
No,
that
they're not
believers,
doomed,
non-believers
Andrew.
are doomed to hell.
Andrew, they're not doomed to be delusional at all.
I'm not sure those words or anything like those actually came out of my mouth. If I thought people were doomed to be delusional, I wouldn't be wasting my time trying to disabuse them of their delusions.
There certainly could be people out there who have sufficient evidence and have analyzed that evidence with sufficient careful thought and clarity that they have a valid reason to believe in some of the things you believe. You're not one of those people, but they could be out there.
Well, I think your position was,
Even you're not doomed, because you could stop.
well, your position was if you don't have physical evidence, then how can you distinguish your belief from a delusion? I
Okay,
think that was the position I
explain
heard,
then.
so.
Fine, explain then. You have an answer to that question?
Sort of, but in debating, there's something known as the principle of charity, which is where you try to judge or promote the opposing view as the best possible interpretation. So if you take the principle of charity and apply it to a spiritual person, they're not going to have a physical argument. Like, they're not going to...
No, sorry.
It's a category mistake.
Sorry. No, we're not having formal debate, even if what you say is true, and I have no idea whether it is. But even if it is, this is not a formal debate, right? Here, we are asking for you to come up with, to present us with the reasons why you believe what you believe, and if we think those reasons make no sense, we're going to tell you. That's what we do on the show.
The principle of charity is such that you don't attempt to misrepresent your opponent's positions or hold them to standards beyond theirs. What I'm doing is saying that your standards are insufficient. You have demonstrated, if my position is, it's not there is no God, it's not there is nothing supernatural, it is, if you are convinced that the supernatural exists, I want to know why so that I can determine whether or not you are rationally justified or not. And when you offer nothing more than I randomly opened a book and it said absolutely nothing about my situation, but it irked me enough to go back to the hospital, you are not demonstrating anything even the most charitable person on the planet would call a rational argument. And you're calling in to complain that people are strawmanning you when you couldn't argue your way out of a paper bag.
Well, it's like you're asking me to physically provide evidence of my most introspective thoughts.
Andrew, not once have I said, please provide physical evidence of your innermost thoughts. I've asked you what your reasons are for believing and talked about whether or not I find them acceptable. If you're going to keep misrepresenting what I actually said in order to keep your delusions safe from interference, then I will just hang up. So what was your question that you didn't get to ask?
Well, I was wondering how you encourage open debate without resorting to straw man arguments. But the point
Since you don't know a straw man from a paper bag, there's your answer.
I just flipped a coin, and on heads, we should hang up on him. And it came up heads, so now not only did you do the right thing and hang up on him, I also worship Abraham Lincoln.
Oh my gosh, that is so awesome. Penny for your thoughts, and a little less for some others.
Wow.
But, all right, let me, okay. Israel in East Hartford.
Hey, Matt, what's up?
How you doing?
Who's your partner over there, Joe D?
Jeff D.
Jeff D.
Hi.
Hey, how's it going, Jeff?
Good. What's up?
Liz, it's a pleasure calling. This is my first time. I watch you guys a lot on YouTube. I'm basically calling because I was a die-hard Christian at one time, converted to atheism.
Well, now, hang on.
Yep.
I don't want to necessarily say I don't believe you, but on my board it says you'd like to share your deconversion from Judaism. So.
Well, yeah. Well, actually, what happened was that I started out as a Pentecostal, and then I transferred over to Judaism.
What was that like?
Well.
What was your process of becoming a Jew?
Well, I actually thought I was. I descended from Jews. I actually thought I did at one time. So I followed that along, but then I wasn't really convinced with what I was learning into the Pentecostal.
What was your process of going from Christianity to Judaism?
My process?
Yeah, I mean, You
mean the reason why I transferred over?
No, I mean, how did you go about becoming a Jew?
Oh, I just basically started going to synagogue, and I was supposed to get circumcised and all the other laws that you have to go through in order to become a Jew.
Okay.
But I never got that far.
Oh, okay.
And then, I started thinking, because I watch you guys on YouTube a lot, and the things that you say sometimes that, your family, well, I don't know about all your family, but some of your family completely turned their back on you. Am I right? Sort of?
Not me, but yeah, other people.
Other people?
Yeah, some of my wife's family has turned their backs on her.
Okay.
Nobody's cut me off in my family.
Okay.
I have friends that don't speak to me anymore.
Well, I had that problem. I had that problem myself. I had that problem actually when I was in Judaism. They all turned their back because they thought, I said I didn't believe in Jesus, but that I believed in, in Judaism, but not that Jesus was the Messiah. But of course, they turned their backs on me completely. And now that I decided I am an atheist, I just flat out don't believe anything by studying and studying the Bible and realizing that what I'm, everything I learned was a hoax. So here I am. I'm a born-again atheist. And I listen to you guys a lot, and it's like, breath of fresh air listening to you guys. I learn a lot from you. I also debate a lot of theists. I also heard
Do you straw man them?
No, but I do study a lot, which I wish I knew more science like you guys did, but I debate mostly on the Bible, and I look up things, and I try to pinpoint things that I think are not true. Like, for example, everybody knows that the four Gospels, they had no names. They were anonymous. And there was a guy named Theophilus. I think it was in 180 A.D. He actually was the bishop of Antioch. He was the one that added those names in there. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
The names are a matter of church tradition, and I don't know that we've actually can pin down.
No, but what I'm basically saying is that Theophilus, who was a bishop in Antioch in the 180 A.D., was the one that actually, from what I understand, was the one that actually put the names in there. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that? Well, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So, I debate a lot, and I think I heard you guys talk about one time. Well, I'm basically going to give you a little information about people who are starting out like I am, like brand new atheists who kind of still sort of in the closet halfway. If they want to defend themselves, I think there's some books that can help them out. Like there's one by Burton L. Mack. It's who wrote the New Testament, the making of the Christian myth. I think they should read that. That should open their mind a lot about what's going on in the Bible and how it got started. And then there's another one, the Myth Maker, that basically the Apostle Paul was the one who invented Christianity.
Yeah, there's a number of good books on those subjects. Unfortunately, I'm not in a position where I can actually recommend any of them on the show.
Well, but I mean, if they're hearing, sometimes I hear people that say, well, I wish I had more information about it, how to defend or argue with somebody.
What I'm saying is that I can't talk about them on the show that way.
Okay, I'm sorry. But nonetheless, I believe, like I said, I wish I knew more science, because I see now that when you debate with people,
you can go do that.
Yeah, I'm starting to study now, and I listen to you guys a lot, but I'm starting also to look in, Lawrence Krauss and some other atheist people.
And I wouldn't worry too much, Israel. I mean, it's what my friend Dennis Loubet likes to refer to as a target-rich environment. There are so many things wrong with so many places where you can find problems with various religions that I don't make a practice of arguing about stuff in the Bible because it doesn't particularly interest me, and I don't have any trouble debating with Christians.
Right.
It's just you don't have to go there. There's plenty of material to cover, whatever is your area of expertise. Right. But by all means, if you're interested in learning more, you can do that.
And I apologize, but we're running short on time, and I got a couple other calls we need to get to before the show's over.
Can I run this real quick too? I think you should. Have you ever got to debate William Lane Craig?
Yeah, no, that hasn't happened. My understanding is that he wouldn't debate anybody without a PhD. But this past weekend, I did a 90-minute Q&A on Pal Talk, and evidently somebody who works with Craig was there, and they're going to maybe try and arrange something, but who knows?
I would recommend that you don't, because I think it's not even worth it.
Oh, I would disagree.
I think you'll win hands down, but
me too.
He's a tricky character.
I'm pretty sure that all the atheists will think I've won and all the Christians will think I've lost. But
that's for sure. Thank you for having me on your show.
Cool. Thanks, Israel. All right.
Okay, take care.
You too.
All right, we've got G-Man in Jersey City. How are you?
I'm good. I spoke to Matt Dillahunty on my YouTube channel not so long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, how you doing, Matt?
I'm all right. You had promised a call today, and when all the lines were full and there was Atheist on there, I thought maybe it was you, but it wasn't. So what have you got for us?
Well, I would like to present my my evidence for the existence of God.
I will be happy to let you do that, but I have one quick question ahead of time. Have you changed your position on the Bible and slavery?
I'm aware that many people believe that God supports slavery in the Bible, and He even tells the people how to deal with slaves. But I think there's a misconception about slavery in the Bible versus the slavery that you see going on in the transatlantic trade.
Okay, stop, because not only did I give you this information, I specifically addressed it. If the Bible says you can own people as property, is it moral or immoral to own people as property?
God says no, it is not.
Okay, stop. Hang on just a second. It sounded to me like you said that whether or not it's moral depends on what God says. So if God says slavery's okay, then slavery's okay?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and let you give your...
But let me say this, though. But let me say this. Please let me say this. There is no commandment in the Bible where God says, thou shalt have slaves.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I'm going to go ahead and let you make your argument for the existence of God. But you might, after we had this conversation and after you looked it up, you are so desperate to make excuses that you will sacrifice your humanity and your morality and say, nope, slavery might have been all right if God said so. That is absolutely disgusting. But I'm going to let you go ahead and...
Let's consider something for a moment, though. Let's consider something a moment since we're on the slavery issue and whatnot, okay? You saw the video I made concerning slavery amongst the Hebrews and whatnot.
Yes, right? I saw you say that the people who disagree with you are wrong and don't know the Bible, and then when I offered you the verses and made the arguments, now your position has changed to, well, if God says it's okay, then it's okay. You're not even willing to admit that you're not even willing to admit that you were wrong about what the book says before.
But there's a difference.
No, it's not. My point my point is that you will not admit that you were wrong about what you said when you were wrong and demonstrated to be wrong. Instead, you change your argument to be that if God says it's okay, then it's okay.
No, actually, if you remember the comment that you left, it was me saying that I should have gave a more exhaustive example about what slavery was.
Yes, and I find that to be G-Man. I find that to be completely dishonest too, because saying you should have given a more exhaustive treatment does not do anything to change the fact that you were wrong. Demonstrably wrong.
And you will let me get a word in and I can explain why.
I tell you what. I tell you what. Whether or not you get another word in depends on the next things that you say. Go ahead.
Concerning the whole thing with slavery again, the video that I made, I primarily focused on the slaves that the Hebrews had amongst their own people and whatnot, which was done because a lot of them couldn't support themselves for economic reasons.
And you don't think it's G-Man?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
You don't think it's dishonest to only focus on Hebrew slaves and claim what you said was the Bible says you have to let slaves go after 7 years, and what I showed you was that you were only talking about Hebrews who owned other Hebrew slaves because that rule only applied to fellow Jews. You portrayed it as the Bible's position on slavery when in fact it was the Bible's position on Jews. It was a special set of circumstances for them, and it includes a loophole by which you can enslave them forever. And you don't find that it was dishonest to say that?
Wait a minute. There is no loophole. There is no loophole in the Bible that says that the...
I'll bet you a paycheck.
That's how you interpreted it.
No.
But can I present my evidence?
No, actually, you can't present a damn thing just yet because I already provided you the passage. I'm not even going to look it up. It's Exodus 21, and after it says that you must let them go after serving 7 years, it says if they came in with a wife, that wife leaves to them. But if you gave them a wife, and they come to you and say, I don't want to leave my wife. You then take them before the elders of the town and they say, I love my master and I want to stay with my master. You drive a spike through the air to mark that they are yours and they become your property forever. The Bible describes exactly how you can enslave your fellow Jews forever. And that is get them single and marry them off because their wives and their kids remain your property if they didn't come into the slave situation with them. That, my friend, is an absolute loophole, which I already told you about.
You are going to disagree on.
Then you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong, and you're done. It is blatantly written there, word for word. Move on to your argument for the existence of God.
Okay, so we'll agree to disagree on the slavery.
No, you're done. Bye. This is not agreeing to disagree. I'm going to pull up the passage right here, and I'm going to read it to you. Exodus, come here, computer. Exodus 21, because I want to make sure that I don't misrepresent it. Because what you did, for those people who are interested, G-Man has a channel where he tries to make excuses for the Bible and slavery by saying, well, slavery wasn't like that. It was just indentured servitude. No, it wasn't. Slavery isn't like that. The Bible says you got to let them go after 7 years. No, it wasn't. You were absolutely dishonest in everything that you said about there. I provided you the verses and gave you ample opportunity to be prepared for this before you walked onto the show today, where I said I would embarrass you if you did not acknowledge that you were being dishonest. If you buy a Hebrew servant, Exodus 21:2, if you buy a Hebrew servant, he's yours for 6 years, but in the 7th year he shall go free without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. But if the servant declares, I love my master and my wife and my children, and do not want to go free, then his master must take him before the judges. He shall take him to the door of the doorpost and pierce his ear with an awl. Then he will be the servant for life. You, sir, are dishonest and unwelcome to call back in until you acknowledge that. Do you have anything to add?
I wasn't even part of that original argument.
Yeah,
so,
sorry.
Let's move on.
Yeah, it's just absolutely sad. Alan in, is it Bokeelia, Florida?
Yes, that would be it.
Talk to Jeff. I'm drinking some water.
All right, it's my turn. What do you got, Alan?
Well, I was having a conversation with my cousin who is an atheist, and I am as well. And he is a nihilist or nihilist.
Uh-huh.
And I was wondering what your opinions of nihilism were and your responses to people like William Lane Craig, who thinks that if you're an atheist, you're not being logically honest if you are not a nihilist.
I can't claim to be knowledgeable about the issue you're raising. If you told me your cousin was a solipsist, I'd have an answer for you right on my lips. But I'm going to pass this back to Matt so he can address nihilism.
So this particular form of nihilism that they're saying the atheists must be is to acknowledge that there is no meaning and purpose in life. And quite frankly, this is utterly dishonest because it's a little bit of a bait and switch. I'm perfectly happy acknowledging that there is no meaning and purpose in life the way Craig seems to think that there is. And not only that, but I wouldn't want there to be an externally imposed meaning or purpose to my life. It's like somebody else telling you what your favorite flavor of ice cream is. I am the pilot of my ship. I get to determine the meaning and value and purpose of my life. And I live a life that is full of joy and meaning, and I don't need a God for it to be so. And people can assert that I'm being intellectually dishonest all they like, but this is just a big salmon that they're, red herring, there we go. A big red herring that they, red salmon.
Salmon or
red snapper. It's a big fish that they're dangling in front of you to distract from the fact that they have no good reason to think that their God exists. Because if you look at their argument and it was true, hey, without the if God doesn't exist and there's no meaning and purpose in life, okay, maybe there's not meaning and purpose in life. What the hell, if you haven't demonstrated that your God exists, just what they're really saying is, I want there to be meaning and purpose in life. I can't see how there's meaning and purpose in life without a God, and therefore I'm going to believe in God. You talk about intellectually dishonest. That is leading yourself to the conclusion you want to reach. That is not about following the evidence. That's about saying, I don't want to live in a world like this, so I'm going to believe in a God so that I can convince myself that I don't live in that world.
And now that I know what Alan's talking about, I'd like to jump back in on this. The other thing that Christians don't explain is how come their God is uniquely empowered to impose this meaning which they think his existence provides to the universe. Seems to me, if he is a being and he has ideas about what he'd like to have happen, well, we're beings and we have ideas about what we'd like to have happen, and we have goals and plans and so forth. I don't see anything about a God that makes it uniquely empowered to decide what the meaning is compared to you and me.
I think Jeff's a really good example because Jeff creates games. And so even if there was a creator, like Jeff, who created a game, the meaning and purpose of that game is determined ultimately by the people who play it. They can
actually it's established by the rules of the game.
But you can have your house rules and you can change
one of my arguments against God is an argument from game design, which examines what a crappy bass-backward set of rules the God has established that you're supposed to follow, and yet you're supposed to get a certain outcome. It doesn't gel, but that was a whole other show.
I guess there's probably a better example, which would be a pool table, as I look at my friend here in the audience. Pool table doesn't have any intrinsic meaning or purpose. People invent games for it. So you could play 9-ball, you could play 8-ball, you could play strategery, you could play any number of things, or you could make your own rules. There's if you sink the white ball in many games, it's a scratch or foul, but there are games, carom games, where the object is to consistently make the white ball go into a pocket off of balls.
And in, say, a board game where there are victory conditions, right? You can say the designer of the board game established the victory conditions, but that really doesn't stop the individuals playing the game for playing their own way for whatever reason they have. It's one does not trump the other. So even in a universe, if there was a God that set up the victory conditions, we still would be individuals fully capable of coming up with our own reasons for doing things.
That's what I was saying the first time.
I get it.
The other aspect of that is I'm not aware what the victory conditions are for life, but my best guess, if there were such a thing, it'd be about survival and having a good time being well. I'm not just talking about rampant hedonism, but it would be about surviving and living a full life. And I don't see that Craig's God or anybody else's seems to have that as a primary concern, because their God has this life as a place to wipe your feet before you get on to the real one. And on that note, I got to thank the people behind the show. I apologize, we're completely out of time. Thanks to everybody who called, except for G-Man. Don't call back until you are ready to admit that you are a lying troll who is still, in fact, a slave. See you next week. I'm going to take one call. Oh, he hung up.
Take another one.
So, Matt from Boston, if you're actually watching the after show, I wanted to address your question, but I wanted to address it off. And the question as it's posed here is, Matt, how did you manage to become so famous on the internet? I aspire to be famous, so I'd like advice. Stop aspiring to be famous. I think that's an absolute, well, I mean, if it gives you joy, by all means go and do it. But I didn't set out to be famous, and I don't, sorry to say, I don't really have a lot of respect for people who have fame as a goal. Set out to do the right thing and help people and share information and learn. And if you happen to become famous or even mildly infamous in a small internet pool, good for you. And if not, oh well, you still did good.
That's it? That's all we're doing for the after show.
You want to do more?
Are we all gone? We got more.
Jeremiah.
Matt?
Jeff wants to take more questions, so let's do it.
Hi, Jeremiah.
Jeff? Is it just Jeff?
Yes, well, we're both here,
both
but
here.
I'm talking at the moment. This is Jeff. What's up?
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Matt. Hey, I just want to thank you guys for the show. It's a great show. It really helped me get over the hump from, not knowing to... Do I have a lot of time, or do I need to talk really fast?
We're in the after show now, so we want to kind of get moving.
Okay. What you were saying earlier about the consciousness and like the mind and how it's like it's physical. Like when I learned that in psychology, that was a huge thing for me to help me get over Christianity. But my question, my friend and I are both atheists, but he has the opinion that religion can be good for people, and I definitely think there are aspects of religion, like, gathering people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, he thinks that for some, the belief in God is a good thing because it gives them hope, gives them meaning to life.
We've had a caller who said that if they didn't believe that God was watching over them, they would go out and rape and kill and do whatever they wanted, and I'm quite content that that person go on continuing to believe that there's a God.
Although I don't actually believe them. And ask your friend. We know that religious belief can provide people with hope, and it can help people ease grief from the loss of stuff, and it can provide people with some semblance of a moral compass. But ask him if he thinks these things are impossible to achieve without religion. That's
Right.
the big issue, because I don't think there's anything useful and true that religions achieve that cannot be achieved without religion.
Yeah, I mean, like he thinks that there's like inspiration from the so-called God, and
There probably
I don't
is. It's really kind of inspiring to sit around and think that you're going to live forever, but it's also kind of inspiring to sit around and think that I was going to win that $450 million lottery the other day. What I care about is whether or not it's true, and if I act like I'm going to live forever or act like I'm going to win the lottery, I'm making really bad decisions.
that's
Yeah,
really
it's not.
true.
It's not a. It's not a. The issue is not can you find isolated examples where it appears to be working out for people, right? The question is, in general, as an approach to life, considering the effects that believing a bunch of nonsense is liable to have in people's lives, in the long run, overall, is it a good idea or not? Of course, you can find isolated examples of people who seem to be getting along fine.
Not only that, you can find things that have nothing to do with the truth of the religion, but are
Right.
found in religious cultures. We have plenty of hospitals and universities because of religious culture, but we could have all of those through entirely secular means, or at least I'm convinced that we could, given a fair system. The problem is religion has this major sociological and financial advantages that don't fit with the secular community.
Yep.
Anyway,
That makes sense.
thanks for the call.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Take care.
There's one more. Hello?
Hello?
The show's over, but we thought we'd take a question anyway.
Is this Matt and Jeff?
It is.
It is.
Great to talk to you guys. Real quick question. I've heard a rumor about atheism, or the atheists have coined the term bright.
Who?
Like, as the homosexuals have coined the term gay. Is that true?
So atheists coined this term, 15 years ago or so?
Oh, bright.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
It didn't catch on widely, but I think there's still a Brights group out there somewhere.
there are. Daniel Dennett was one of the people who was an early adopter of Bright, and Dawkins was on board for a little while. I don't hear either of them using it anymore. I never found any real reason to use the label, and I think Sam Harris toyed with it a little bit back when he was trying to say that we shouldn't identify as atheists. I don't find that particularly useful, because if I tell somebody I'm a Bright and then they say, oh, what's that? And I'm like, well, and ultimately we get around to the fact that I don't believe in God, then they're going to say, oh, you're an atheist. And then we're right back to where we started. We haven't really added anything to it. I'd rather just say I'm an atheist and have them go, but you're so nice, or how can you possibly be moral, and then start answering the questions.
Yeah, right. Ultimately, the word atheism is much more well known, and it's relatively clear. There's still issues with the definition we have to fight every once in a while, but it's better than starting with a brand new term that you have to explain from the ground up. Nevertheless, I was okay with with the word brights when it came up, just like I'm okay with pretty much any name atheists want to use to identify themselves, as long as we're clear about what we believe and what we don't believe. And I find arguments about what we ought to call ourselves a complete, ridiculous waste of time.
Right.
That is a great way to turn our attention away from actual important issues and just fight amongst ourselves for no good reason.
Right.
Which we're pretty good at anyway.
Yes.
I'm just very happy, even though it's after show, taking my call. You guys are totally on my bucket list. I would love to get down to Austin, be a part of the show, and then maybe get you guys a pitcher of beer or something. So
a bucket of beer.
A bucket. Hey, whatever works. The more, the merrier. So
I'll take horchata.
I'll buy a round of whatever it is, because you guys have definitely turned my life into a very positive thing, and I have much more intellectual arguments and things to go on, and I just really appreciate it, and wish you all the best, and maybe I'll be calling again next week.